Hello, everybody. We are back, episode 27 of Shanalytics. I'm back streaming. It's been a while, guys. I've been out of town. I've been moving. I've been traveling, but I'm back with my guy Vinny from he's a writer at 49ers, all 49ers Sports Illustrated as well. He's over at the Gonzaga Bulletin as well. Make sure you go and check out all the stuff he's been putting out. I just got back from FSU football practice about an hour and a half ago, though, but we got a lot of 49ers to talk. And you know what? I'm glad to see everyone back in the comments. I see my guy, Amin the Dream, what's up? Crypto Ryan, what's up? What's good? Big play Slay. Everyone, I appreciate everyone tuning in. I'll try and be back sometime later this week, still figuring out my streaming schedule, but I promise I'll be back with the content on a consistent basis for you guys. There's a lot to talk about, though, since the last time we've been here, Vinny. I don't know. Has much happened with the 49ers in the last 2 weeks? Maybe?
I think so. I mean, it's great also having Darius Slay in the chat. I think that's pretty cool. Big play Slay.
Shout out Big Play.
Shout out. Yeah, I think you should be a 49er. That'd be a great thing to have. But yeah, it's been super fun seeing, finally, most of the fans get to see Trey play live in person, and seeing some of these younger guys too and we'll get into it a little later, that maybe we didn't expect to be at the levels that they're at this point. Particularly a one cornerback who's been playing really, really well, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, it's been super fun, and it's cool seeing the other guys and the other teams play too. Like especially these rookie quarterbacks. It's been really fun seeing how they're developing and the moves that they're making, especially with, Fields is really putting the pressure on Andy Dalton here. And, a lot of questions have been asked about, Zach Wilson. I think he's I know it's only preseason, but he's been answering the call recently, making his throws. And seeing Robert Saleh coach too as a head coach, that's super fun to see. And as much as it, sucks that he's not on our sideline anymore, you can't help but feel happy about the position he's in. And he's definitely going in a good direction with that franchise. So, yeah, it's been lots of fun watching these Niners these first 2 weeks of preseason.
Oh, absolutely. And, hey, Mac Jones is even making things really interesting in Cleveland right now.
Yeah,
obviously,
he is too.
There's that whole situation. But let's get into what we're here to talk about today, Vinny. Let's start with the 49ers quarterback competition. The way I want to approach this first topic, we're not going to dive into who we think should start too much. Let's just talk about what's been going on in general for these last 2 weeks, right? So there's the preseason game against the Chargers, of course, this past weekend. Trey comes in after Jimmy Garoppolo gets that first series. And Vinny, let's touch on this first of all. It was reported prior to the game that Jimmy Garoppolo would get the first series. Trey Lance would get 2 series after that. And then Jimmy was supposed to come back in, but he didn't. Do you find anything curious about that Jimmy didn't come back in?
Well, I think I find it more curious that they just didn't have him play 4 series. Like Jimmy playing 4 straight series. They were going to go 1-2-1. I haven't really seen that before. And
Me neither.
I think maybe I think it could be a situation where Kyle is kind of like, finally noticing like the clock's kicking like, okay, I know what this guy really does bring to the table. And I know what I can do more with Trey. And I think it's just a general thing that I think of just him handling the quarterback, like how Trey Lance's reps. I know there were a lot of people that had some problems with him not getting as much ability to use his legs. And I think especially in that first game, I don't have as much of a problem with that. Obviously, you want to see, him run and make plays with his legs outside, whether it's design runs or outside of the pocket. But, Kyle Shanahan is just giving him those reps where, he's going to be a quarterback that's an athlete, not an athletic quarterback. And getting those, especially without a year of playing football, getting those reps under center, getting comfortable sitting in the pocket and getting those kinds of reps, and maybe just telling him in these first few weeks, like, hey, you do not especially in that week one, do not leave the pocket as much as you may want to. Do not leave it unless I tell you, unless it's a design play where it's a rollout. And, we saw a little bit more of that in, the Chargers game where we saw him use his legs a little bit more. And I think it's just going to be a slight build up to eventually, releasing the playbook where they are having those read option packages. They are, having more bootlegs where he's getting out in space and making throws. And so, yeah, that's all to say. I wasn't too shocked to see that, they didn't put in Garoppolo for that fourth series, because I think at this point, I think, even Kyle knows, like, what Jimmy brings. And it's not necessarily, like a bad thing that it didn't like Garoppolo's end, like, because I think it's, he obviously and the team knows that this is going to be Trey's team soon. And so getting those reps that he needs to, be in a position to start week one, I think that's just part of the process.
For sure. And in terms of, how the reps doled out, the way I see it is with Jimmy Garoppolo right in that first game, they were only going to play him for a certain amount of time. And then he got in there, and then they feel like he didn't get enough reps. So they were like, oh, we'll play him another series. I feel like, the opposite kind of happened to that Chargers game where Jimmy was going to play 2 total series, right? But he gets in that first series. He gets 16 good plays. If you listen to the way Kyle talked about it specifically, it seemed like he was satisfied with the amount he had seen from Garoppolo. And then if I'm going to go from the negative viewpoint, I will say this, like, Jimmy Garoppolo already made one mistake. Do you really want him to go out there and make a second mistake, and things just pile up and stack on top of each other when seemingly Trey is going to be the starter soon at some point? And if the 49ers could get a really great trade offer for Jimmy, that'd be awesome. So I just don't know how much of a risk you want to make it, especially when you add on to the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is such an injury risk. I mean, consistent injury risk, even especially in the preseason with this backup offensive line. So in terms of how things played out the first couple of games, let's talk a little bit about Trey. So with Trey specifically, right, he struggled a little bit in that first preseason game, but I think he showed flashes on that big 80-yard touchdown. But I'll say this. Let's just talk about this from the first game. I think he wasn't quite decisive enough in that first game. It still seems like he's not, and I think he showed progression in this terms of when he got into that second game, a lot more decisiveness, a lot more comfort in the 49ers offense. But I keep going back to that first play, that first passing play I saw from Trey Lance to Brandon Ayuk, right? Where Brandon Ayuk just straight up drops it. I've watched that play back so many times now, Vinny. He shouldn't have thrown that ball. He should have just ran straight in front of him. He had open green grass. So that's kind of the decisiveness that I'm a little bit, I guess, worried about. I mean, there are other things I'm worried about with Trey Lance, but that decisiveness scared me a little bit because when I'm watching Trey, he's this great rushing threat. And I know you talked about it. I know people have talked about it, how maybe he isn't being asked to quite do those things yet. But man, when the live ball is, when it's flying, when things are going, when you're in the heat of a game, you got to make those quick decisions. And I would have just rather seen him go and pick up that easy 8 yards instead of getting, the 12-yard out to Brandon Ayuk. He had that rush right there, man. So I was a little bit worried about the decisiveness.
Well, yeah. Well, what I would question with that is that it's not like he threw a bad ball, though. Like the ball, like he should have caught it, and it wasn't like if Ayuk catches that, that's a yards after catch, and that's something that you're gonna, I don't have a problem as much with. Like if you're gonna live like with 4 extra yards and potentially a breakout play with Ayuk, you're gonna make that throw, and yeah, that may be the safe play, the rush and keep it, and like maybe who knows, he just jukes everyone out and he scores a touchdown. That's just something we don't know. But yeah, like I think. In that first game, I think his stat line, was a bit misleading given the context of that game. Like, obviously, I think it was 5 for 14, 128. Like, most 80 of those coming. Yeah.
There were 3 good drops in that game that should have been caught balls. There were 4 sacks in that game. One of those sacks, I don't think one of those sacks was on Trey, but I think the other 3, you could probably put that on him or, the communication, whatever you want to say. So
Yeah.
in terms of the stat line, I'm with you. I don't think people who trash on that stat line, you didn't really watch the game.
And yeah, and the thing about it too was like I think there was because I was at the game and I was looking at a couple. I thought a couple times like Trey looks like it felt like he looked a little rushed, and I thought it was just because of him and like he was being rattled. But the thing that I really really liked about that first game in particular is that he stood strong in that pocket and he used the pocket really well and
Yeah,
stepping up when needed and. It's just ultimate like you're gonna get sacked as a quarterback, and I actually, didn't mind that he didn't get hit because he hadn't been hit like live in a decent amount of time, and obviously not to the point where they're trying to injure him, but like getting a nice few healthy hits was I think a good sign for him, knowing like, hey, okay, this is how it feels like to get hit in the NFL, and yeah, I mean, I thought he used the pocket well. I thought he was, stood in strong, and you saw in the play calls too, like with Garoppolo, we know, like I think we've seen, based on the past, 2-3 years, a lot of his throws are down the middle. There were a couple of those throws where you saw him, Trey Lance stood in there and he made those throws to those outs on the sideline to. One being River Craycraft and one being the Richie James. And you saw the zip that he had there. And I thought that was, that's a, very promising sign, knowing that they can use that at least more now than what they've been able to do in the past. And, in just these last two games in general, I think it's, hard really not to, not to think that Kyle Shanahan was having a lot of fun calling these plays for Trey Lance and seeing like he had the, he had his laminated card like over his mouth and just like probably thinking to himself, hey, Trey, it's like, I don't know. He says like, hey, Trey, you want to have some fun here? Watch this. And then like having those kinds of plays, I think that's going to be something really fun. And, the promising thing of what Trey Lance overall could bring to this team, especially if he reaches his peak.
For sure. I really love seeing those plays where you can just see Trey Lance really use his arm in a way that Jimmy Garoppolo has no ability to. I hate to be not trying to be harsh, but there's so many times when you see plays that you're like, wow, this is a play that wasn't even possible for the 49ers in the last few seasons. It's going to completely open up Kyle Shanahan's playbook. And I've really enjoyed the way that we've seen Kyle dial up shots for Trey. That 80-yard touchdown. That was a specific shot play that Kyle called for Trey, like you were saying.
Yeah, that was a very similar play to the against Green Bay in 2019 when Garoppolo was at it. It was just, Trey got it. I mean, there wasn't as much separation. Or like Kittle on that play was a lot more open than Sherfield was on that play. There was literally like no one within 10, 15 yards of Kittle on that play. So that was the same play though, like same design idea.
For sure. And with Trey in that second game specifically, the thing I really enjoyed seeing from Trey against the Chargers is we talked about this before we last got off and when we were on your channel a few weeks ago, which is that you wanted to see how Trey would respond to pressure. You wanted to see how he would respond when, he got, if we're going to use the boxing analogy, once he got knocked down a little bit, how is Trey going to get back up? Trey started 1 for 5. He got back up really nicely. I think his response to starting off with that, having that slow start at the beginning of that Chargers game, it's really impressive to me that he was so poised and composed and that he just went back firing. And if anything, he looked even more confident than he did in those first 5 throws. So you wanted to see specifically him bounce back. Do you feel like you got what you needed to see from him in terms of that?
I'm starting to see it. And I think that was really important for him, especially going up against, one of the better already defensive minds in the league and Brandon Staley. I think that was, something that was really good. Obviously, he got his first pick, which he threw his first pick, which I think, again, is a good thing. Like, it's preseason this week too. I'm not, and it's, year one of a very raw quarterback. So I'm not really asking him to be Patrick Mahomes in year one. I might not even be asking him to be Patrick Mahomes at all. That's not fair at all. So, Yeah, I liked how he responded. One thing that I actually, obviously you look at Garoppolo and Trey Lance, and there's a lot of differences between the two. I think the one thing that I noticed that's kind of similar between Trey Lance now and Garoppolo when he first came to the 49ers was that, at both of those times, both quarterbacks were not afraid just to sit in there and rip the ball and like find that guy. Like especially in that Travis Benjamin touchdown, I think
Yeah.
he just stood in there and he just ripped that thing. And it was a good throw. And I think we saw some of that with Garoppolo too when he started. And I think that's that could be something that, maybe Garoppolo told him, like maybe just like, hey, or Kyle, maybe, I don't know. But and I think it's going to be super interesting to see how that dynamic works throughout the year. And, getting knocked down, getting back up, Jimmy obviously knows about that, having his fair share of injuries and especially, responding in that 2019 team, like being the quarterback that was on that Super Bowl team and, being very productive at that. I think that's something that, Trey Lance could probably, take from it. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I want to go to a few comments and answer a few questions, and then we're going to move on to the next thing we want to do. I just wanted to bring up this from, hey, Darius Slay himself, Big Play Slay. He's saying that, actually, this is a wrong question. I want to bring up this one. So Jimmy has so many inefficiencies that Lance is good at. This makes me think that as he's with the first strings, is there more high extensive touchdowns? So I think he's essentially asking, is there going to be more explosive plays with a guy like Trey? Because, like with Jimmy, his arm strength, his limited ability, you can only do so much with him. So I mean, I kind of agree. I agree with that for sure. He's going to open things up. He's going to make it more vertical.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think you see it in the play calls in the preseason. He is dialing up those big shots to, Sherfield in particular seems to be his, favorite deep ball target, and imagine what they could do with Debo or Ayuk on those deep balls. Kittle, right? You really want to line up Kittle on a deep ball with a safety? I don't think so, right? Yeah, maybe you find, your way to, get Raheem Mostert out there or something like that. And use check on use. Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's just bound to be, more explosive plays, not just in the passing game, but also, in the running game too.
Oh, for sure. And Big Play Slay was also asking, Trey's look good with the second and third stringers. How do you guys think that, they'd start in week one with the first stringers? I'll say this. I think Trey Lance should and will start getting more first-team reps starting probably today. This is the first time 49ers, I believe, are back from practice. If not today, they're back tomorrow. I think it's a tough balance because, while he hasn't had all the first, quote-unquote, first-team reps, Vinny, right, he's worked with Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, George Kittle a lot in practice. It's not like he's not working with those guys. I guess the worry I more have now in terms of him playing with the starting players instead of the backups is how's he going to mesh with that offensive line? He hasn't really gotten to have a ton of run with Alex Mack or Trent Williams yet. Trent Williams is hurt now. Alex Mack probably won't play in any of these preseason games. And we see how bad that offensive line is if they don't have all their starters. So I guess I guess for me, it's like the biggest worry I have right now in terms of Trey playing with the ones. It's that starting offensive line. It's how cohesive are they with Trey Lance, and is there going to be communication issues early on?
Yeah,
that might be an issue they run into.
Yeah, I think that could be more of just like the relationship with the center, because I think it's more important with chemistry with your receivers and your, guys that you're throwing to rather than the guys that you're blocking for, because I think ultimately, you trust that those first team guys are going to know, like, if you need to, call an audible or, have a line change or coverage change, like Mac is making those coverage calls, right? So I think that's going to be where it is. But that is an important thing, is that continuity and that familiarity, your tendencies of your guys that you have on your line.
And we'll talk a lot more about the 49ers offensive line moving forward, but I want to stick with quarterback for a second because, the 49ers fan base is kind of split right now. Even though there are more Trey defenders than there used to be, and there's a lot more people getting really excited for his play, I still think a huge part of this fan base is split in terms of who they think their starting quarterback is going to be. So I think what we're going to do now is Vinny is going to go ahead and make the case for Jimmy Garoppolo to be the starter. And then after he's done, we'll go back to me and I'll make the case for Trey Lance to be the starting quarterback. So Vinny, let me talk.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. You think Jimmy Garoppolo should be the 49ers starting quarterback?
Yeah.
Give me the case for why Jimmy Garoppolo should start week 1 for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah. So, well, first off, not just because he's Italian back there, my flag. But so the idea, as we mentioned before, there is, oh geez, I'm already wrong, I guess. There we go. You can't start. So
see you later, everyone. We'll end the show.
We'll wrap it up. Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that. So I think the idea is that Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to be a 49ers quarterback for much longer, right? And like you mentioned before, I think teams are going to want, or the 49ers in particular, are going to want to get that value back. And they want to get good value for Garoppolo. So if you look at him starting week 1 and particularly playing week 2, those are 2 good games for him to, I guess, pad his stats a little bit. And,
he might be playing the worst 2 teams in the league.
Yeah. So that's something like the Eagles and the Lions are just, let's just say it, they're not good at all. Right. And so you look at those first 2 teams and you look at, teams that could, because other teams too face quarterback problems all the time, and especially with injuries. So in the event that one of the, quarterbacks in the first 2 weeks get injured for, their certain period of time, or if there's a situation where a team doesn't like their quarterback, say, Ryan Fitzpatrick struggles in Washington, you look at those first 2 games and you look at, the stats that Kyle Shanahan could put out for him, that could open it up for, a potential trade, and why you should start Garoppolo week 1 in particular and week 2. And, ultimately it's on Garoppolo to win those games too. Like if he loses those games, or one of those games even, that doesn't help his value at all. And, I think another case that you could make for Garoppolo is the idea if Trey Lance isn't fully ready yet, and you don't want to, throw him into the, I guess it's not really throwing him into the fire, but, just being like, hey, here you go. It's a lot of pressure to put your rookie quarterback into that, first spot, say, okay, here's, day 1, this has got to work today. And if it doesn't work today, then that could, potentially affect his confidence in the future, which I think goes along the lines of there's a certain expectation that comes with Garoppolo. And I think that ultimately could, what you're getting. Like if Garoppolo struggles a little bit in that first or second game, then you're just like, okay, that's what comes with it. Whereas, if you do start Trey Lance in those first 2 games and he struggles both of those games, then, then it's just, a dumpster fire on 49ers Twitter saying that they picked the wrong guy. Right. And that's a lot of pressure for a 21-year-old kid, in his first, like he's got Twitter,
I will say
I'm
that
sure.
I'll say this too, Vinny. There's a lot of 49ers players who seem to want Jimmy Garoppolo to start right away. It doesn't seem like the locker room is completely bought into the fact that Trey's going to start week 1.
No, I don't think the locker room is split on it either. Like, I don't think it's pretty divided on, like, there's like a, team Trey on one side and team Jimmy on the other. I think there's just all team 49ers, which, and another thing too, why you could start him is that you just, again, those expectations, and what you can get in the productivity from Garoppolo, especially with, what Kyle Shanahan can do, especially in those two games. Like, I think it was pretty confident. You feel pretty confident in those two games, even with Garoppolo or Trey Lance, that they're gonna, beat the Lions and the Eagles. And
yeah, well, and you could even pitch it like this, Vinny. If Jimmy is starting week 1 and he starts blowing out one of these teams, you can put Trey Lance in. That's not going to hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
You certainly make it a thing where if Jimmy Garoppolo plays well enough, you protect him the right way. He doesn't throw interceptions, all that good stuff. Right?
Yeah, and there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot more flexibility with what you could do with Trey Lance if you start him, or if you start Garoppolo versus if you start Trey Lance. Because if you start Trey Lance right away, then it's just, I'm in the belief like you got to just stick with him and you got to go, and you
can't have a situation like Miami had last season. That's the thing the 49ers want to avoid most of all with Trey Lance is you don't want to put Trey Lance in a position where you're going to yank him as the potential starting quarterback as the San Francisco 49ers. That is DEFCON as high as DEFCON goes, right? I mean, that is worst case scenario that you put Trey Lance in and then things don't look quite as right as they should. And then you got to yank him out for Jimmy Garoppolo and insert Jimmy as the starter. And then Jimmy starts a few games and then maybe Trey comes back. Like, to me, that's a situation where having two quarterbacks is having no quarterback, right? So that's the kind of scenario the 49ers don't want to get in. And you kind of touched on this a little, but let's make sure we really tell people that even though we are big Trey Lance people, we are big fans of him. I at least am sort of expecting that he'll start early on. I don't know when that is, if it's week 1 or week 4, what that might look like, but I expect him to play early on. He still is going to have a lot of growing pains, Vinny. There's still a lot of stuff for Trey Lance to work through. He's not a perfect pocket quarterback.
And he's going to play games. Like, he's going to play in week 1. He's going to play in every single game. It's just a matter of when he's going to start. And that's just going to be the ultimate question.
Yeah. And with Jimmy, too, it's, like you mentioned earlier, that it's the trade value thing. If the 49ers think they can increase his trade value by playing him for a game and a half, they might do that, and like Big Play Slave just brought up, it's like the Dolphins last year. Yeah, they insert Tua, then he plays bad, then they put Fitz back in there. That is, really, I think worst case scenario in my opinion. I guess, Vinny, let's end the case for Jimmy on this. I think we're kind of still you and I at least are in a spot where we're not exactly sure who the 49ers starting quarterback is going to be, but if Jimmy were to be the week 1 starter, would you be happy with that situation?
Yeah, I don't think he would. I want Kyle Shanahan to make the best decision for this team going forward. And I think it's safe to say you can win. There's no reason you can't win at least one or both of those games with either Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo in there.
Fair enough.
And I think, and ultimately that's what it's going to be, because this is the, spot the 49ers have put themselves in, and Kyle Shanahan feels like, kind of has to dig himself out the hole he kind of dug for himself. And if it is Jimmy, then it's going to be, I'm in full belief of what Kyle Shanahan is doing. And I think that's, I wouldn't be upset if Jimmy Garoppolo started, because again, you can still win games with Garoppolo. It's proven. But the question really comes, what potential comes with starting Garoppolo versus starting Trey Lance? But I think that's, already been answered given what they traded for Trey Lance and given, the timetable of Garoppolo staying in San Francisco. Because it's, for being honest here, it's not going to be much longer.
Nope.
So
if he's on the team past the trade deadline, it's a mistake in my opinion. And if they don't, cut him or trade him by then, and he's just on the team for the rest of the season, it's a mistake.
You do kind of, I will say, you do kind of raise, like, even going farther than that, you do kind of raise your eyebrows a little bit if he's on the roster in 2022. You're just like,
oh, for sure. Then what are you doing, man? Like, it's just, yeah. But let's talk about the guy who we think is for sure going to be the starter by 2022. I think we can say that maybe.
I'm like 80% confident that Trey Lance is going to be starting year 2. Like 80%.
So, let me make the case for why Trey Lance should start week 1 for the 49ers, Vinny. He gives the team the best chance to win. Let's talk about it. He doesn't need to be a better surgical pocket passing quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. What Trey Lance needs to do is he needs to be the best weapon for the 49ers. He needs to be the most explosive playmaker. And if he can do those things, then he should be the starting quarterback for the 49ers. Now, he's not going to sit back there and dice teams up like Drew Brees will. But the style that the 49ers are going to play with the zone read, with having multiple ball carriers, with the style they already have, it's not only going to make the offense more explosive, more dangerous, but honestly, Vinny, I think it's going to protect a lot of the players on the 49ers offense way more than they used to be protected. Think about Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle taking end arounds, taking jet sweeps constantly. It's not because Kyle Shanahan wants them doing that all the time. It's because it's out of necessity because of the quarterback position in the last few years. So with Trey Lance, you can make life so much easier on the rest of the offense. He's going to make life easier for Brandon Ayuk. He's not going to put Brandon Ayuk in as easy in a position to get hurt. They don't have to throw suicide slants to Ayuk every single game constantly. They're not going to have to play Deebo the way they do constantly. And quite honestly, they're going to have the best red zone offense in the NFL with Trey Lance, in my opinion. If not, they should be top 2 or top 3, and it's a mistake if they aren't. And I think what Trey Lance has to offer is a dual threat quarterback with the explosive plays. With everything we've seen from him so far, he's not the most polished, perfect quarterback yet, Vinny. But this is the main thing that gets to me. And you tell me if I'm wrong here, is that the only way Trey Lance is going to get better, the only way that he's going to be the best version of himself is if he gets as many quarterback reps as possible, as many reps at the position as he can in a live game. So I just don't know. And I'm sitting here questioning, like, I don't know what the benefit is to sitting Trey anymore. I know, he can go, he can watch, he can see how things happen in a game. He can see what Jimmy does. But ultimately, I don't think he's going to learn as much from that as he would from him being the starting quarterback for the 49ers. And because 49ers have put so much into Trey Lance, because he is the reason they will be successful, I think you have to start him as soon as possible. And I think that's week 1.
Yeah, and I think, I think the simplest argument here why you should start Trey Lance is like what you mentioned. He is the best quarterback on this team. That is, he is.
He's the best player at quarterback. He's not.
Yeah, he's the best
like pocket passer. He's just a better player overall than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, like like it's hard not to avoid the talent gap. It's kind of big, and you can see that in the way just the way that Trey Lance moves, like in like his tendencies and talent. Ultimately could efficiency like obviously helps and stuff, but ultimately talent is going to give you over that next edge, right? Like, I mean, it's not fair to compare Trey Lance to Jalen Ramsey, but you see the difference between Jalen Ramsey and all the other he's not doing that because he like works hard every day. Yeah, he works hard every day, but Jalen Ramsey is just one of the most like probably the top 5 most talented athletes in the NFL. Like, it's even top 3, I'd argue.
And Trey Lance is the best athlete on the 49ers. I mean, he just is.
He's one of them.
I honestly, he's the best one. And say I think he's the best athlete on the 49ers. Just
Ayuk is unreal though.
Ayuk and Deebo are really scary as athletes, but what Trey can do with his arm is something that no one else can create. And I mean,
that's the edge that he has as a quarterback. He can just throw.
Yeah, considering that he looks as big as George Kittle does when he's running in the field, Like, I don't know if he has quite a similar skill set, but we're talking about a huge quarterback, and this is a guy who's going to run people over in games. He's not just going to run around them. He's going to maul people in NFL games. And the great thing for him is if you went back and watched his college tape, the thing I worried about, the thing some people worried about is that you would watch him try and run over defensive tackles and defensive ends. And you're like, at the NFL level, I don't know how you're going to do that, man. But in reality, with the way Kyle's going to design things, he's just going to be running over linebackers, safeties, and corners constantly. And I think he can thrive in that kind of situation.
And I think that's part of the reason why there wasn't as much running in the first couple of weeks. I don't think he wants to, because I think that is a bit of a concern. Given, what you traded for this guy and you don't want to, kill him in those first 2 preseason games, like being exposed to his legs and stuff. And,
you just want to show teams what you're going to be, you're going to be running either.
Yeah, maybe like once or twice, like a game, you can try and run over someone. But I'm just like, dude, when you get in that open space and you can just, slide and, or go out of bounds, please, for the love of God, please do that. Because you see, because he's big, right? But he's no Cam Newton big. Cam Newton is like they're similar.
Cam Newton's bigger than him, but I think people got to realize like he's as big as George Kittle is. Like he honestly is. If you look at them side by side, they're roughly the same size. Now George Kittle might have a different body style, right? But in terms of height and pure like just girth as a person, Trey Lance he's a big dude. And I guess let me end the Trey Lance topic on this. And I see someone talking about it in the comments, so let me bring up the comment. With Jimmy's inefficiencies and everything that we've seen from Jimmy Garoppolo in terms of how much he turns the ball over, and especially in this training camp, it hasn't been reported on enough, honestly. He's had 9 interceptions in 15 practices. That's an issue. So with Jimmy's constant mistakes, with his ability to honestly, like he makes the same mistakes consistently over and over. You were talking about this before, Jimmy. You kind of know what you're getting with Jimmy. There aren't any surprises with Jimmy Garoppolo. You know exactly what you're getting with him. I guess for me, that's kind of the problem, is he doesn't seem to learn ever. He doesn't seem like he's progressing as a quarterback. In fact, if anything, it seems like he's starting to regress in his career. It doesn't seem like things are trending in the right direction for Jimmy. So I guess with all that of Jimmy's struggles and all of Trey Lance's potential, I think with Lance, like he might just, like I said earlier, I think it's at the point where he just gives the team the best opportunity to win because of everything he offers.
Yeah, and I saw, I think it may have been KP Show on Twitter. Either him tweeted, he either tweeted it or he retweeted something just along the lines of like, you have a rookie quarterback that's making rookie mistakes, and that's fine. But when you have a vet that's making those same rookie mistakes, that's where you could kind of lean more towards Lance. And we've been
Jimmy makes mistakes. He makes the same mistakes over and over, right? He throws that same interception to Fred Warner we've been hearing about in practice. He throws those deep ball interceptions when he just doesn't have the talent to make the throw and he tries to force it. It's not like Jimmy is going out there and doing different things that lead to different mistakes. He's making the same consistent mistakes over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to be, I think that's just ultimately going to be why the potential trade value for Garoppolo is either going to go up or down, whether he's making, he's limiting those mistakes or he keeps making them. And
for sure,
that's where I think we've been pretty consistent on what we think who should start week 1. I've been consistently saying if Trey's ready to go week 1, and Kyle Shanahan feels like he's ready to go week 1, there's no reason not to start him. And ultimately, again, it's about who puts the team in the best position to win. And
that's what I wanted to get at, Vinny. Even though Trey might not traditionally be ready in the way that you would hope a rookie quarterback to be ready.
Yeah.
Problem is that the veteran might not give the team the best chance to win. And that's where things get really dicey, I think. And I think the 49ers might be forced to be in a position where they're either going to have to start Trey a little before he's ready, or they're going to have to start Jimmy, and things could just
and getting through those growing pains too. He's not going to do that by holding the clipboard. He's got to get out there, and he's got to get fooled by guys like Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander. He's got to
he's got to learn by experience.
He's got to get confused by certain defensive schemes that he's never seen before in his life.
Oh, for sure,
and
for sure.
He's got to realize the differences between playing against the Rams, where you gotta make your decisions maybe a little quicker because you have a double team. You have two linemen on one guy almost every single snap in Aaron Donald, maybe even three. And that also be good learning moments for him, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I just want to be clear too. They're not in a bad spot if they start Jimmy week 1.
I don't think they're in a bad spot.
The team is just juiced, and the team is just they can still win.
I just think they're making a mistake for the long-term outlook of this team if they don't start Trey as soon as humanly possible. Because the issue is that, like we've been saying, is Trey needs all these game reps in order to learn, get better at the position, and be the best version of himself for the 49ers, right? The only way to do that, like we've been saying, is through game experience, getting thrown in the fire, quote unquote, and learning on the job. That's the main thing you got to do at quarterback. So I think for the 49ers, they're in a scenario where either Trey's not quite ready or they got to get him those game reps.
Ultimately, Trey has to play well too.
He has to play well, of course, but I also think
it'll help him more if he's good.
Yeah, it'll help them more, but I think it's also dicey where if Jimmy Garoppolo is so bad and then you start him a little before he's ready, I don't want to say you could ruin Trey Lance, but you don't want to stunt his growth. That's kind of the main concern I have at this point with the 49ers in terms of the quarterback position. But let's end on the quarterback position there. We kind of covered everything. I want to talk about two other things before we get out of here. Let's dive into, we just finished up 2 preseason games. We're midweek now. It's Wednesday. We're going to see this Raiders game this weekend for the 49ers. So I guess for you, what has been the most surprising part of the preseason?
I'm gonna go with a specific player. I'm gonna go with, I still don't know how to say his first name. Diamador Lenoir. I think he's been excellent this year, and I think in these 2 games, I think he's been really, really good, and I think. Maybe a little surprising, I guess, too, is that I think I kind of knew what Talanoa Hufanga was going to bring, and I thought he was going to be a really good guy at 6. But I think I think Lenoir is doing what Ambry Thomas is supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
As that 3rd pick. And I think, he kind of got thrown into the fire a little bit in week 1, with D'Amico Ryan saying, hey, here you want to have your welcome to the NFL moment, go against Tyreek Hill in your first series ever, right? And I think he handled it pretty well. And he did get a pick in that game. You can see the instincts that are there, and you can see that he's making plays out there, and it's very promising to see that. And I'm positively surprised by that. I think he's been really good in these first 2 preseason games so far, and you hope that you can continue that consistency with him, especially given the somewhat lack of depth at the cornerback position.
Yeah, Demo has been a great surprise for the 49ers, I think. And if anything, it's kind of been a surprise in the sense that it's like Ambry Thomas was, like you're saying, he was supposed to be that guy for the 49ers, that guy that they could potentially even play as a rookie. And now I think it's kind of flipped to the point where if anyone's going to get playing time early as a 49er, I think it's going to be Lenoir over Ambry Thomas. And it seems like the defense trusts Diamador Lenoir a lot more than they trust some of these other corners on the team. We just saw them cut B.W. Webb, who was supposed to be, the backup nickel. He's not going to be there anymore. So I'm interested to see how the 49ers are willing to deploy him once all of the corners are healthy, right? We know Mosley and Verrett are going to line up outside. We know they have K1 for the slot. I wonder if they'd be willing to kick, Demo into the slot, or if they get an injury to Mosley, what are they going to do there? Are they going to trust Lenore enough to play outside as a safety threat? I'll be intrigued to see what happens if the 49ers are in a position where they have to choose and they have to pick between one of these rookie corners to play, because I think that's going to be the situation they're in at some point this season, even if it's not for an extended period of time. They're going to have to challenge one of these guys to come up and play a significant role early on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then for me, in terms of the most surprising part of preseason, I would say this, Vinny. I think the 49ers defense has been so much better than I expected. And I'll say
I was going to say that.
For me, it's part of it is the defensive line. Even though I knew it was going to be the biggest strength of the defense, they probably had the deepest defensive line in the league. I think this might be a better defensive unit in 2021 than they were in 2019, even with the amount of depth that they have along the line, with the amount of waves they can throw at teams, with how strong the defensive line is going to be for the 49ers, the guys they have inside, outside, on the edge, Samson Ebukam, even Arden Key. I think they don't have – I don't think they had any depth issues there, but now it's even starting to get to the point where I'm saying to myself, should the 49ers try and trade one of these interior defensive linemen to try and pick up another player, because they're so stacked at the position that they're going to be in a spot where they're going to have to cut guys who are going to make teams almost immediately. I mean, a lot of guys, not just a couple guys.
Yeah.
So that defensive unit up front to me has been especially just so great. And then that linebacker room has been impressive with the amount of depth they have. And while people were very worried about the 49ers secondary, now finally seeing it, I don't have many worries. I think my biggest worry now is how much safety depth do they have? Do they have a real starting safety? I don't know if they have that right now. Tavon Wilson seems like he's slotted for that. We've seen Talanoa Hufanga have some good moments, but again, he is a rookie and he does struggle in coverage. So I don't know how willing they'd be to play him right away. But then you even see guys like Jared Maiden. He had the best PFF defensive grade from the Chargers game last week. He had that great interception, I believe. So I think, or it was called back, but I just look up and down the 49ers, the defense at all three levels. I think this isn't just a good defense, Vinny. I think this is a great defense. And I'm hoping that D'Amico Ryans isn't, I don't want to say screw things up, but man, this defensive unit altogether, the actual players they have on it is as impressive as I've seen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of credit has to go to D'Amico Ryans too. I think he's been making the right calls, and I know Justin Herbert didn't play in that second game, and Mahomes only played one series, but they only give up 19 points and 10 points, right? Yep. Like in those two games, that's less than 15 points a game combined in this first two games. And he's still gonna have his struggles though. Like when he faces Aaron Rodgers in week 3, you got Tannehill later in the year, you got Matthew Stafford now twice a year, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson. You're gonna have those struggles, and but based on what he's shown so far, I think he's really showing that he could be a very good defensive coordinator, and looks like they may have made the right decision here. Going him instead of Raheem Morris. I think Raheem Morris would have been that other guy where you thought, okay, that could really, change some of the expectations for the team. But, and, there's I forgot his name, but there's the, that, higher assistant that the 49ers hired too, a defensive assistant that I think he's been very helpful too. In helping.
They have former head coaches on this defensive staff. That's what you're talking about. I mean, of course,
there's one guy. There's one guy in particular that I think it used to be with the Bills. And he was a really and he's been I think he was the guy that's kind of just like been next to D'Amico Ryans, kind of helping him go through these kinks of being a defensive coordinator. So I think I've been really surprised with how he's been able to handle it so far.
Oh, absolutely. And then, let's go to the most disappointing part of the 49ers preseason so far. Now, I'm going to say this, Vinny, before we start. I think there's one very obvious areas. So if you want to touch on it now, we can just start with it.
No, you go ahead. I want to see.
All right.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about it. 49ers offensive line looks horrible. It looks as much worse than I anticipated them being. In fact, I think the 49ers have 4 starting offensive linemen. Beyond that, I don't know who you can trust. Right now, Daniel Brunskill is supposedly going to be, or Colt McKivitz is going to be the right guard starting week 1 for the 49ers, but that should be Aaron Banks. But guess what? It's not just because Aaron Banks is hurt. He wasn't even in that position in the first place. He was playing with the second team. The 49ers have 0 offensive line depth, and they've shown so far that if they get any injury to any of those 4 players I was talking about in terms of Lincoln Tomlinson, Mike McGlinchey, Alex Mack, and Trent Williams, this offense is in trouble, Vinny, just to say the least, because I seriously think, in the way that we were talking about corner earlier this offseason, where we were saying, oh, yeah, if they get 1 corner injury, season over. I think if the 49ers get 1 injury to one of those 4 starting offensive linemen that I keep referring to, I hate to say season over, but, man, the outlook is not great.
Yeah, that they have been, struggling. I think Jalen Moore has been doing pretty decent. He had his struggles a little bit, obviously, but
James Betcher is who we were referring to.
Yeah,
earlier.
okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, but yeah, it is a little bit of a concern, but given some of the injury history of some of the offensive linemen, Alex Mack thankfully hasn't really been injured a lot, and Lincoln Tomlinson hasn't really missed many games either. But there, 2019, I think McGlinchey missed a few weeks, and Trent Williams missed a few games last year, and so that is a bit of a concern. But I think given what the quarterback brings to the table, whoever they start, I think that could help the offensive line in terms of that department a little bit. But
where I'll disagree with you there is if Jimmy Garoppolo is the starting quarterback and I don't know, let's say Alex Mack or Trent Williams isn't playing week 1,
that is
Jimmy
a little
Garoppolo
scary.
Could seriously get hurt. That's really scary.
That is a little concerning, yeah.
So that's where I'm most concerned, honestly. That's kind of the biggest concern is like I keep saying, if you really lose one of those guys, I wonder about the ability to be able to protect your quarterback.
Yeah, and there's a way, and Ryan just mentioned in the comments, there's a way you can kind of protect that offensive line a little bit with more play action, with more running and more bootlegs. So.
But you can't do much more of that with Jimmy Garoppolo, man. That's when you got to go to Trey Lance, unfortunately. That's the kind of situation the 49ers are in. They might just be forced to be like, hey, we got to start Trey Lance because we're going to be moving him so much outside the pocket. If we put anyone else in there, they're going to get hurt. I mean, if they put Nate Sudfeld or Jimmy Garoppolo in the game, it becomes really, really bad and really quick. And more like 49er mine did mention this. Moore has looked better. I agree with you there, but I think it's fair to say, Vinny, that if there's any position the 49ers could make a trade for today or yesterday, if there's any trade they should make, it should be for an interior offensive lineman or swing tackle. They need depth at those 2 spots in particular, and I think it's a dire situation that they're in, honestly. I think the expectation that all 4 of those guys are healthy all the time, I just don't expect that. I mean, like you mentioned, Trent Williams hasn't played 16 games. He always misses 2-3 games throughout the season. Alex Mack is getting up there in age. I mean, he's as old as he is. I mean, he's not even playing preseason at this point. Trent Williams got his knee drained. I mean, man, I really feel like anything is going to hold this team back from potentially getting to that next hump or to that next rung up on the ladder, if that takes them from a really good playoff team to a championship team. 2 things that I think could hold them back, Vinny, are their corner depth and their offensive line depth, honestly. If anything is going to hold this team back from making and winning the Super Bowl, I worry that those 2 things in particular could really hurt them.
Yeah. He's got to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And then for you, Vinny, what's been the most disappointing part of the preseason?
I don't know. I've been pretty satisfied with the preseason so far. I think there wasn't really much that I didn't. I'm not really surprised by a lot, honestly, or like wasn't really shocked to see some of the things that were going on in preseason, in particular with the play calling. But I guess one player that is a little disappointing was Richie James. I think I think people were looking forward to seeing him make that jump from next year, given some of the bright spots that he had. But he really hasn't, taken that grasp, and he's had, two drops on five targets, which, may not look as bad given it, but I mean, 40%, drop rate isn't the best. It maybe more volume will help. And he did have that one special teams run that he did pretty well on, but it seems like they have guys. I mentioned it last time. There's a lot of guys that are like, similar to Richie James that, could be better. Like you saw that progression from like Travis Benjamin struggled in week 1, but you saw him get that touchdown in week 2 and you saw him clean up those mistakes.
But Vinny, let's be frank though. So let's just go over the wide receiver depth chart for everybody. So 6 wide receivers are likely going to make the team, right? Right now, we know Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel are going to make the team. I think we know that Juwan Jennings, Mohamed Sanu, and Trent Sherfield will make the team. That leaves one spot for either Richie James Jr., Travis Benjamin, or Nasimba Webster.
All of which are similar guys. Like they're all similar.
Exactly, Vinny. That was just what you were talking about. The fact that all those guys are wide receiver special team hybrid, right? They're all returner type hybrids. So I think right now it seems like Kyle is trying to make Travis Benjamin look good. He caught that touchdown from Trey Lance. He's done some special teams return work for the 49ers. And then we even saw Nasimba Webster. I think he's been looking better than Richie James Jr. has been too. He's been returning the ball better than he was. Now I don't think he returned in that last preseason game, but in week 1 of the preseason against the Chiefs, I think he looked better than Richie James maybe ever has for the 49ers. Yeah. So between that and the drops for Richie James Jr., I really think in this next round or 2 of cuts, Richie James Jr. isn't going to be on the 49ers for very long. And I think it's disappointing because, like you said, we saw those flashes from him kind of early on. But, man.
And he's had the most recent kick return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Against Seattle. That was the last one they've had. So, and he's still a good player, and he's going to get picked up by someone. Like, he's not going to. Sure. And, like, teams could definitely use Richie James, but just given, what the 49ers are looking for, he may be one of those, tough cuts. Maybe one of those odd men out.
And like we said, I think it's kind of to the point where it's like there's so many guys who are so similar to what he does, and he's not playing particularly better than them, that coaching staff might just favor Travis Benjamin over him, just because of that veteran experience and because they have had, guys like Richie James for so long, and they kind of know what they're getting from him. And he hasn't, honestly, he seems to be regressing. If anything, it's kind of disappointing. It seems like he's definitely not progressing. He's definitely not getting better at this rate. So I think for the 49ers, like, is he a tough cut? I don't even know if he's a tough cut anymore, Vinny, because I feel like there's so many guys on the roster right now, like Nasimba Webster, who I think Nasimba Webster should make the team over him, and I don't think Nasimba Webster is going to make the team. So I think it's kind of tough.
And the guy we're not even talking about even more is Jalen Hurd. He's not even in the he's not even in the conversation anymore.
Okay, but what are we talking about with Jalen Hurd anymore, man?
No, exactly. No, and I think that's a disappointing part too. Like,
it's disappointing for sure.
He hasn't played. He can't judge a player that hasn't played.
Yeah, he hasn't played, so I don't know exactly what we're supposed to judge with Jalen Hurd. Everyone, I've enjoyed being back for Shanalytics. This was really nice. Thank you so much to Vinny for coming on. Make sure you check out all of his socials. I got his Twitter. He's got his Twitter right there. Make sure you go check him out on YouTube as well. I'm just going to check out the comments real quick. Thanks. It's good seeing you guys in there. Thanks, Crypto Ryan, for sticking around. Thank you, 49 Reminded. I see you guys up in there. I'll be back later this week, potentially Friday. If not, I'll be back Monday. So look out on Twitter, guys. I'll keep you all updated there. Thank you so much again to Vinny.
And
we'll be back
Monday will be on my channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be back on Vinny's channel then. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate the time. Have a great Wednesday and enjoy your 49ers this weekend.